Dave with Nerdarchy here, for nerds by nerds, hanging out with my fellow Nerdarchist Ted and our new friend Alex.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming out. You know, I'm going to butcher your last name, so why don't you do me a favor and you say it so people know who you are.
My last name is Alex Augunas.
Augunas.
Augunas, yep. Lithuanian names all the way.
There you go.
So, you know, I stumbled across you on the interwebs on Facebook, and your website,
Everyman Gaming.
Everyman Gaming, which is, you know, Alex is like the master of crunch. Like, if you want to destroy someone's mind with numbers, this is the guy for you. He excels at it, and in a good way too. I mean, you know, Pathfinder and 3.x is all about really putting things together, and you're very good at it.
Well, thank you. When I started that blog, it was originally like a Google Docs type guide to how to build tough encounters for the Pathfinder role-playing game. And because really when people sit down to build an encounter, they'll follow the core rulebook rules, which is all nice and well, but there's like a stigma that you have to stick to, like, if you're a CR 5 monsters, you have to use a level 5 party, and that's not really challenging. That's kind of basic. So the guide was about how to make encounters hard for players, for GMs who want hard encounters.
Now, do you take into an account with what you're doing, like not the party level, but the actual party level? Like, you know, what I'm saying is there's times where you've got players who they've got really good stats. They've min-maxed to the nines to make a really powerful character, versus the person who just threw something together, and, you know, while they're both technically the same level, they're miles apart in actual power.
Well, my system is designed around experience. How much experience a monster is worth when you kill it.
Okay.
According to the rules, when you have a NPC character, that character's CR, or challenge rating, is equal to its character level -1. And the reason that it's -1 is because it's not equipped like a PC. The game assumes that you're giving NPCs less money, and it's very strictly budgeted. So if you have a character and you're giving them PC loot, hence you're talking about a PC's CR is always equal to its level. So from there you can determine how much experience a single player is worth. And generally speaking, you can use experience to balance out your encounter. So it's why, for anybody who reads Order of the Stick, why the linear guild concept works.
Right.
Because you have two parties that have spent the same amount of experience on both sides, players and monsters. That right there, you have about a 50-50 chance of either party dying.
Okay.
Because the goal of an encounter is to wipe away all your PC's resources, one of which is hit points.
Right.
So when your players have nothing left and are dead, they're dead, and it's a hard encounter. And the higher above CR4 you go, the more likely it is that you're swinging things in favor of the monsters. So if you want an encounter where your PCs aren't likely to win, you have to go higher than your player's party level, like the average level for every player in the party, +4. So if you have a party of 4 5th level characters, you need a CR9 encounter to the point where it's even. And then from there, CR10, it's more in favor of the monster.
Okay.
So on and so forth. And my first couple articles are about how to do that, how to use experience as a encounter budgeting guideline to make more balanced encounters. From there, I just started branching out with different types of GM advice. I did interesting character builds, because all the time I see people who limit themselves to very strict, I'm going to use an MMO term and call them cookie cutter builds. And, you know, very cookie cutter in a game that should not be cookie cutter. So I try to do cool builds based on different characters, different fantasy characters, or sometimes... Or concepts.
I remember reading your knock you on the ass monk concept.
Yeah, I love that one. That one, I played that one. That one is fun, but it doesn't come together until later in the game.
So for a low level, what would you say is your favorite build?
Oh, my favorite build for a low level, I really like fighters. It's so funny because you hear all the time about people who don't like the fighter because, oh, the wizard can move mountains and turn people into frogs, but the fighter just hit things. And I think fighters are fun. I love bonus feats. So
I'm right there with you.
So if I can design, and like that's really what multi-classing is. When you go single-class characters in Pathfinder, you design your character to specialize in a whole bunch of really cool special abilities unique to that class. But when you go multi-classing, your job is to try to pick as many feats that support your specialization as possible, and kind of just build it up. So like, a straight fighter is probably going to outdamage one of my crazy trip 'em up monk builds because of all the multi-classing. But the fighter is not going to beat the monk at tripping people. It's just boom, bodies are flying everywhere, 50 feet that way, maybe a weapon that way. It's just multi-classing as I guess more like an art than a science comes down to taking something and getting better at it.
Well, with all the options, I mean, it definitely does. It does take an art form in order to get every little nuance.
Yeah, that's why I'm subscribed to the player companion line now. I was like, oh man, so much crunch is coming out so quick. I gotta make sure I have it. Just come on, just take my money, Paizo. Just, here you go. I'll give you more.
When you're explaining the monster versus PC and the CR system, I couldn't help but chuckle to myself because I guess I haven't played much Pathfinder, and I don't think 3rd edition really explained it the way you just did. And whenever we played a game and a player would go down, the only thing I could think about is, in our game anyway, it's like, what's he got?
Right.
And I'm like, you know what Alex just said pretty much summed up at our table, because the players always had better equipment than the monsters.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh man, I'm sorry your character died. Can I see your sheet?
Yeah. It's like, oh man, the real treasure is now that your PC is dead. Like, oh, what's this encounters loot? Oh, that drow had a +1 dagger, and that goblin it's a +1 morning star. But oh man, my buddy Fred over there, he's got elven chain +4. I'm gonna take the elven chain.
And those boots of speed, he doesn't need them anymore.
Yeah. I mean, you're re-rolling a new character with a new loot, right? So we can just take his loot, right?
18 years of gaming. I don't think a single player character has ever said, oh, well, we're going to put them to rest with all their stuff. I mean, that was always just, pulled off to the side.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we can still do the respectful thing, but he doesn't need the stuff.
Oh yeah, we'll go out and we'll buy him new clothes that don't give me a bonus to my dodge rating.
Yeah. No one needs their belt of giant strength in the next world.
Yeah, it's actually funny. I had a friend who introduced his campaign by having an NPC who didn't want to adventure anymore. So he actually went to the graveyard and dug up all of his gear from like an empty coffin. That made me think of that, which is really cool imagery to just, and I'm like, oh wow, maybe I should go be a grave robber now. And then you go and it says, sorry, we didn't leave this guy's gear here. Signed, his adventuring companions.
Yeah.
So
grave robber, you mean necromancer?
Both. I mean, come on, let's face it, Ted the wizard isn't going to dig up his own graves. He's going to go hire an Igor or something to do it for him.
Igors.
That's what Igors are for.
You need an Igor.
And that's why you take the leadership feat, folks, so you can have someone else dig up your graves for you. Going back to Everyman Gaming, I started writing a whole bunch of articles, and then in this month, in June, which I don't know when this is going to come out, so assuming it's still June, which I don't think it'll be,
probably.
But in June I said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I took this rule set idea that I had and if I published it? And it's something I've had for a while. It's a rule set that I call psychological combat, and it's a rule set for Pathfinder that's designed on using charisma-based skills intelligently to do stuff to your enemies.
Okay.
Messing up with their minds, making them do actions that they wouldn't normally do. Because I'm an MMO fan. I've played WoW for at least 6 years, maybe 7. I don't remember. Yeah, I'm sorry too. I love it. I'm not sorry, but it's my guilty pleasure. But when you play a game like that, one of the mechanics is you can taunt the bad guys and make them attack you. And now that doesn't work well in Pathfinder because it's silly to say, I do this one thing and now that guy is inexplicably focused upon my every move. But on the other hand, having a system where you can manipulate your enemy's actions is cool.
Absolutely.
So I wrote in Ultimate Magic, they came out with a feat called Antagonize, which was basically using Intimidate or Diplomacy to get your enemy so mad at you that for one round they focused on you and tried to kill you. Usually suicidally tried to kill you. And the problem with that is it was more like a WoW taunt, where it was like, hey, wizard, I'm taunting you. Now you literally have to run up to me in melee and try to stab me with your dagger. And that's literally what the feat says. It can do nothing but move to you and try to make a melee attack.
But you know what? That's just the mechanic.
And,
like, I would actually argue the other side of that in the sense that, you know, if you're an avid reader, you've probably read plenty of books where the hero or someone on the hero side or even from the other side taunts someone into doing something that they wouldn't normally do. And, you know, I think when you put anything into a mechanic, you're like, well, it doesn't really make sense. But, you know, there are triggers that you can use against someone psychologically, like you're saying.
Oh, yeah.
That will make them do something that doesn't make sense.
Right.
And the fact that it's short term too, it actually makes sense because you might go, oh, wait a minute, I'm in a murderous rage and I've been tricked.
Yeah. And that's kind of why in psychological combat I took the idea of that feat and I expanded it into a generic action that anybody can do. It's like fainting or demoralizing. Anybody can, you know, use their brain and their ability to talk and try to piss somebody off. I know that I piss off people on a regular basis, and I certainly don't have a feat for it. But
have you ever looked at your character sheet?
No, I haven't. I should ask my player to see that. But yeah, it's, you know, the idea behind this particular special action is that anybody can do it, and then you can take feats to get better at it, kind of like you can take improved feint or improved demoralize. So if you have greater, this action is called antagonize. If you have greater antagonize, then yeah, you can make that wizard charge you with a dagger. But you or I, who aren't trained in getting into people's heads like that, probably couldn't. So it's not one feat gets you this really crazy power. It's more like now this feat's powers have been spread out to everybody, but if you want the really crazy thing, you got to build for it.
Okay.
And it also goes and it creates a unifying DC so that it's easy for GMs to use. It's just called Psychology DC. It's 10 plus target's hit die plus their wisdom, and so whenever you make a skill check to do one of these things, you have to beat that DC. If you are trained in sense motive, you can use your sense motive bonus instead, plus 10 if it's higher. And then it also takes feint and demoralize and rewrites them to work with this new system. And then the last thing it does is that I included a morale rule. If anybody's played 2nd edition D&D, it's like morale in there, where you have your psychology DC, and whenever something happens that is on a very long, broad list of potential triggers, and then it's like, hey, GMs, you can write your own if you want. This isn't the only list of things that can scare people. And so you make a wisdom check, very, very small bonus, it's 10 plus your wisdom, against this DC. And under normal circumstances, you're going to fail. And if you fail, nothing happens.
Right.
Because the idea is that most of the time you're not going to fail your psychology, you're not going to run away screaming. But as things happen that whittle away your psychology DC, you take penalties to it and it goes down. Maybe you watch your friend die. Maybe you watch your friend get polymorphed into a toad. You know, stuff that it's like, oh crap, I need to get out of here situations will whittle away that psychology DC. And then when you beat your psychology DC, first you become shaken, and then if you beat it again, you become frightened, just like a standard fear effect.
Right.
It's basically a way for fear effects to be afflicted upon you without needing magic. Because that was always strange to me, that the only way to make somebody afraid was to cause fear on them. So
makes sense.
And that and common sense from the DM.
Yeah.
But you know, it's funny you should mention that, because me and Ted were actually discussing morale in a roundabout way the other day, because we were talking about the Dungeons and Dragons and Monsters series we started, and we were talking about when we do the dragon. Well, if you think about it, in previous editions, dragons always had dragon fear. And if you weren't a certain hit dice, you didn't even get a saving throw. You just ran away screaming. And the higher level you were, the more likely you were not to run away. But if you think about it, if you're the general of an army and you're a high level, but your army just broke around you, that is a fear effect all by itself.
It is.
Without any magic involved, because you went, oh crap, I'm the last guy standing, and they're all heading for the hills.
Just because the paladin is immune to fear doesn't mean he's not going to run.
This is true, and I actually talk about that in that section where it's like, well, sometimes fear is magical, and it's like it's more like instead of being rules, it's like suggestions. So it's like, hey, a paladin is going to be immune to magical effects to make him run away in fear. Like if you're casting cause fear on the paladin, it doesn't work.
Right.
But that doesn't mean the paladin wouldn't be scared if he watches his commander die in front of him,
right.
In one shot. So it's kind of like a give and take sort of thing, and it's designed to less be something that the PCs hold the GM to, but rather than an easily referenceable document that GMs can use to say, hey, this is when these goblins aren't going to stick around for you PCs anymore and run away. Or this is when your allies are done and they're leaving.
Right.
And, I even say, it's up to you to decide whether you want to force this on the PCs too. It's designed so that if you do, it's not going to be one die roll and then you're running out of the combat screaming. It's at least 2 turns of that stuff happening.
Right.
But, it's really more for consistency. The idea that this is a rule set that you can use encounter after encounter. You don't have to worry about accidentally forgetting something. You don't have to worry about the players accusing you of changing it, because I've had players do that to me before. I don't know about anybody else, but, oh, you're using this house roll and you're changing it every single time just to screw me over. And it's like, no, this is actually written here in this handy little PDF that Alex wrote for me. And then there are some feats, and there are some character archetypes and character traits, and that kind of rounds it out, the psychological combat.
Now, is all of that information already up on your blog, or is that coming out?
That's a product. It's $2.99, I think, on most of the major PDF buying websites. It's Paizo has it. Somewhere, my co-host Ryan just laughed at me for messing up Paizo's name again. Paizo has it, D20pfsrd.com has it, and DriveThruRPG has it. So you can buy it. It's cheap. It's $2.99, which is cool. I'm probably going to talk about it on my blog someday as kind of like a, hey, this is where these ideas come from, but I guess you guys got the early scoop on it.
Yay. Well, what we'll do is we'll put a link to your website, of course, and we'll put a link. Well, actually, I'll find it on RP Drive-Thru, and I'll put a link to it.
That'd be awesome.
So people can find it and everything else. And I like the idea of having the morale barometer. Like, it used to be in previous editions, and they took it out. And, one of the things I've talked about before is nobody fights to the death. Very rarely is someone, do they care enough about their stuff to die for it.
Yeah.
And this concept, especially the dungeon crawl, the old school gaming, where you kick in the door, you kill the monsters, and you take their stuff. No, they're going to run away. You just skewered 2 of their buddies, and they're not looking to meet the same
At least throw
fate.
down their weapons and
If
cower.
you actually look through the monster manual, at least through my recent look-throughs, there's loads of monsters, and they say doesn't fight to the death, is cowardly, will run away.
Yeah.
And over the again 18+ years of gaming, like I can't think of a large amount of encounters where the monsters turn and flee. That weren't, oh, well, we killed them next round, or, whatever. It's just, they don't break, they don't flee. There's an encounter. You walk in a room, you kill the stuff, or you kill the monsters, you take their stuff. So, like...
Well, that comes from another GM psychology bit that I think if the article's not out now, it'll be out soon. It's this idea where, and I actually think it's not a good one, but it's this idea where the GM is diametrically opposed to his players, as in the players succeed by defeating the GM, and the GM succeeds by killing the players. I've read so many stories about GMs who just talk about how they don't consider a campaign a good campaign unless X number of PCs are dead on the floor. And at least my style of DMing, and I'm not condemning anybody who is bloodthirsty, essentially. I don't know if either of you two gentlemen are.
Oh, he's definitely done the bloodthirsty thing.
Well, here's my thing, right? In my defense, I don't actually set out to kill my PCs, but sometimes they're overly stupid. and I try and create an organic real world that isn't really rigged for the PCs. So, when I've done random encounters, they really are random encounters. And, guess what? If that looks too tough for you to fight, it probably is. And maybe you should amspray. Or, there's been times where I've given my players, like, warning after warning that they're going the wrong way.
Well, I'm not saying that some of the detrimental effects that have happened in a total party kills weren't the player's fault.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is there have been times that you've either gotten lazy or have oh, I didn't realize this monster was going to be that powerful.
Oh, that's happened too.
So he's made encounters that it's only through the grace of some really fortunate rolls that the party managed to survive.
Well, taking a quick brief aside from what I was talking about GM psychology, the truth is that some monsters are a lot tougher than their CR would make you think they
Absolutely.
are. Like, oh my gosh, shadows. Shadows are one of those monsters, and for those of you who don't know, they're basically undead living shadows that when they touch you, you take negative levels, no save. You just get your life drained away. Like, it doesn't matter whether you're 3rd level or you're 20th level. If you have enough shadows, your PCs are going to be terrified. Like, just because of how their mechanics work. Yeah, like a good cleric can kill them all in one channel energy, but then what if you have dozens? 3 dozen. 5 dozen shadows. How many can you...
Empowered by a Grave Knight.
Empowered by a Grave Knight. In a zone of desecration, which is the same thing, actually. But it's just like, there's some monsters out there that are way harder than... not way harder, but there are different scales of power within the same challenge rating.
Absolutely.
It's like, a 3rd level party can handle a shadow. But a shadow is a monster that scales well and is just as challenging to a high-level group in large numbers. Like, 6 goblins isn't really that challenging to a 6th-level party, or whatever the CR would end up being. But 6 shadows is still going to be challenging, because they can, if they get a surprise on you, you've just taken 1d4 negative levels per party member. At 6th level, you're down to like a -4 penalty to everything and 1 touch away from death.
It hurts a lot. But here's the other side of that, where the DM accidentally, and I've done it, comes up and puts up an encounter that's too tough for your players. But how many times as a DM have you put together this encounter and be like, yeah, this is going to be tough for them? No, it's not going to kill them. They're you think they're going to survive it, and it's very doable. But you're like, this is going to be a tough one. Round 1, boom, they just drop whatever you just
all
did.
the time.
You're like, you son of and sometimes that's sometimes how the too hard encounter happens. You're like, well, look what they did. Look what they did to my templated beholder. That's giant 2-headed. Whatchamacallit?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to finish up my thoughts on GM psychology. Basically, GMs, you should try to keep it so that you are fostering a story and you are moving your players along throughout a storyline, rather than just being bloodthirsty and saying, hey, I'm inviting my friends over to kill them all, because that's not a great thing. It'll be better game in the long run if you are making challenging encounters, but with the realization that you expect your players to overcome these challenges if in pursuit of a story. At least that's my thought on it. But going back to the Beholder, the reason that things like Beholders get dropped so quickly, and I think this is my 3rd article on the blog, is because of an idea called the action economy. And the action economy is basically the concept that every creature that participates in a combat has a limited number of actions allocated to it.
Right.
Players have a move action, a standard action, a swift action. They can trade their swift for an immediate, they can trade their standard for a move, but other than that, they're limited to those 3 unless you're playing Mythic. And because of that, on both sides of the party, the players have an advantage against a single monster, because they have a total of probably around 12 actions, if there are 4 of them, versus the enemy monster's 3.
Correct.
So, because of the action economy, those types of encounters against one powerful opponent tend to not work over as well, because they're so heavily outgunned. Which is why in the long run, if you're making an encounter hard, it's better to use a lot of appropriate lower level monsters than one big high level monster, or have one big high level monster and boost up the CR to CR plus 4, 5 by having a lot of lower level guys that are more manageable, but are strong enough that your player's attention is taken away from the big guy. Like, if your Beholder had a whole bunch of bewitched fighters who were running around cleaving the wizard, then you can bet the wizard is not going to be trying to cast Disintegrate on the Beholder. He is going to be trying to take care of the fighter, who is now trying to cleave him into gooey, meaty bits.
Wow. On the one point, going back to the whole, how a GM runs things. I've always done things as a GM. I try to provide the characters with a story and entertainment. It's my job to give them a world to live in, and a challenge and an enjoying night, but my job is not set out to try and kill them. but my job is to challenge them. So in retrospect to the one super encounter that they totally just smashed through in one round, that's where I do, kind of a GM fiat type of situation where it's like, well, I'm sorry, this needs to have a bigger impact than what the stat block actually shows. So over the years, regardless of, what, players have felt and done, I've always said, okay, well, I'm just going to tack on, a few more hit points, even if it's just to give the monster one more round, just so I can get, one swing at them to show some kind of fear.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that's, that's a tip to kind of undo that. And if you feel as a GM you want to give them some extra, coin in the treasure, or give them some more experience, that's a way to reward that choice, but at least you have a way of dealing with a monster who went down before it even got an action.
Oh yeah, a great way you can do stuff is like that. And for me, GM fiating is awesome, but I also like it when my GM fiating can be supported by rules, because that way if I'm like, hey, well, this is why that happens. How did he do that? You don't know, but that's why it happened.
That's Dave's favorite thing.
Woo! Awesome.
Yeah.
So, but like for me, an adventure path that does that perfectly, and that Paizo made, is called Brain of Winter. It's an adventure path about the PCs traveling throughout the material plane, trying to find Baba Yaga to stop the entire world from freezing over.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, it's awesome adventure. I'm going to be spoiling a little bit, but nothing that you wouldn't have been spoiled if you just read the title of the book. The third book is about Rasputin, as in Rasputin.
Nice.
And knowing what you know about Rasputin, as in, like, he was impossible to kill in real life according to Russian stories.
Right.
Like, as a character, he has contingency cast upon him that if he is cast with, if he dies, he's automatically returned from the dead with true resurrection, and it happens 3 times. So if you kill him, you've actually got to kill Rasputin 3 times, which is hilarious, and that's a great way.
Wait a minute, isn't that 4 times?
Yeah, 4 times, right? Because you got to kill him the first time too. So he comes back from the grave all these times, and it's just hilarious. And it's a great way to be like, oh well, my fiendish beholder with the advanced template died. No, he didn't. He had a contingency on him with true resurrection, and he popped back up. And he's back there, and he's killing you.
Now, I don't like to explain it, though. Even if I know what happens,
Oh.
I let him suffer through, because, maybe later at some point they can find, like, if it's important to your plot anyway.
Yeah.
And if you're going through the trouble, maybe it is, or maybe you can change it so it is, because things just got more interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And have them discover it through play.
Yeah.
I don't like to. I like to make my players just interact with the world and figure it out through the world itself.
Well, I mean, like, on taking that route, it's like, okay, well, this beholder had contingency and true resurrection on it, so if it died, it came back. Beholders can't cast contingency, and beholders can't cast true resurrection. This beholder was not a cleric, so how did he do it?
Yeah.
And which is another great way to be, like, pulling your players along. Who is this beholder actually working for who would be willing to cast a true resurrection on him? Because that spell is expensive. It's like, what, 10,000 gold?
Well, and in my games, the way I run them, I would just leave that out there as a subplot. Like, my whole DMing philosophy is, or methodology is, I just shotgun plots, and whatever ones they pull at, that's the ones we run with. But that being said, just because you didn't pull out one of my other plots, it doesn't mean something's not going on.
That's true.
And next thing you come back and your village is burned to the ground. Well, you should have looked at that thing.
Yeah. So sometimes things that kind of randomly occur because of a fiat or because of a instantaneous choice, you jot some notes down in your campaign notes on the computer or on your notebook if you're old school, and then it's something to work with later, and you never want to lose those little nuggets because they could turn into pure gold.
Oh yeah, definitely. Thinking about why things happened and how you want to build upon them always can turn into great things.
Okay.
So how long have you been you've been doing some freelance work, you said?
Yes.
How long have you been doing that?
I started freelancing, I started writing in 2011, but my first product wasn't published until 2012.
Okay.
It took a while to get that one off the ground. My first product is the Pact Magic Unbound Volume 1. I'm kind of known in Pathfinder for my Pact Magic stuff.
Okay.
Pact Magic is, I'm trying to think of the word. It's kind of like geotic magic where you draw seals and
neat.
you do rituals and call spirits and seal pacts with them. It's based off of real world magic philosophies. Like I think his name was Aleister Crowley in the early 19th century wrote an entire book about how to invoke angels and evoke demons, and a lot of D&D's demons, like demon species, come from that book.
Oh wow.
He wrote like about 72 different types of demons, and I think the Bone Devil is from that book, Horn Devil, a lot of them, maybe even the Ice Devil. And so in 2006 or 2007, that ballpark, Wizards of the Coast came out with a book called Tome of Magic for 3.5,
Right.
which first took the concept behind Geotin magic and made a rule system out of it, where you bind spirits and they give you supernatural powers. Pretty simple. So then in 2007, my co-author Dario Nardi took that idea and brought it one step further and changed it around a little bit to make it even truer to the actual beliefs for Geotin magic, because, in Tome of Magic, only about a third of the book is dedicated to this idea, and the book was only about 125 pages long. Dario wrote this massive, 300-page book on the topic that had a very high reception rate. And then, flash forward to 2011, I'm playing Pathfinder, I'm out of college doing all this other great stuff, and one of my friends shoots me a copy of this book, and I go through and I'm like, wow, this is really cool, but this is balanced for 3.5, it's not strong enough to be Pathfinder stuff, because, Pathfinder has more power inherent to it than 3.5 did. So I sent Dario a letter saying, hey, you should totally update this to Pathfinder, here are some ideas you could do. And one idea turned into 10 pages of ideas, which turned into 84 pages of ideas. That's called Pact Magic Unbound Volume 1.
Okay.
And so it's kind of an example of, if you want to get into freelancing, you just got to put yourself out there and try. Mm-hmm. Because if you have writing skills and you practice and you work off of what other people have done and you learn from other people, then you'll get good enough and people will want to work with you. But so I've done 2 books for Dario, Pact Magic 1 and 2. We have a 3rd book coming out, hopefully by August, but I can't really say a whole lot about it yet because we haven't announced it.
It's hush hush.
Hush, 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 hush.
And we didn't announce it here at Nerdarchy either.
You totally didn't announce my super secret book that I'm not talking about, but is totally coming, and has nothing to do with Pact Magic. So, it's actually the exact opposite end of the spectrum.
Uh-oh.
So
We got a teaser. We got a teaser.
You got a teaser.
What is the opposite end of the spectrum from Pact Magic? We're going to do some research.
There you go.
Cough technology. Cough.
There we go.
And,
researched.
Done. And so then from there, I started applying to other freelancers and said, hey, I would love to work with you. I love your stuff. This is what I've done. And I've worked with Raging Swan Press, where I do a lot of writing villages that you can take this village and drop it in your game if you don't feel like designing your own. I've worked with Abandoned Arts on a race project. My favorite race in the Pathfinder role-playing game is the Kitsune. It's all over my blog. Literally the end of every single post in my blog is a joke about how a different Kitsune class is my favorite character class to play. It'll be like Kitsune Fighter, Kitsune Rogue, and then sometimes I get bored and it's like Kitsune Red Shirt, Kitsune this, whatever is relevant to the topic I'm talking about. I'm working on something to do with that race because it was published and then never really done anything with. It's kind of like, here's an idea, go with it. And so I love the race, so I'm trying to do a lot of research on Japanese and Korean and Chinese folklore to get something really cool out of it. But
Okay.
I don't expect that to be done for a while. I have one product in the pipelines with Rogue Genius Games, but that's another one that hasn't been announced yet, so I'm not going to spoiler that one like I did my own product, because I know Dario wouldn't care, but Owen and Casey Stevens might care, so not sure. Let me think, what else have I done? I have a line with Craigerton Broadhurst, again at Raging Spawn Press, where I talk about how to take different types of locations and build them like dungeons without them being subterranean caves complexes, like how to go into a Dryad's forest and run that like a dungeon, and things you can do and rules to consider and stuff like that. What else have I done? There's something else that's not... Oh, psychological combat. I already talked about that. So those are the big ones that I've done right now. if I had a goal, when I started, at the start of this year, 2014, I wanted to write 7 products and have them published and be finished because I did 2 last year. I think that with Psychological Combat, that was my 7th, and I have a couple more coming out this year.
Cool.
So goal met. Next year's goal is to try to see if I can convince someone at Paizo to let me write with them, but I don't know if that'll happen because they have a lot of talented writers. But you never know. Keep an eye out on all the books that they publish, and maybe you'll see my name someday.
Well, cool. Don't sell yourself short. I've read your stuff. You're very talented yourself, so you fit in there. Is there a holy grail product for you that you want to put out that's going to be your baby? Do you have anything that you percolate in the back of your mind? Maybe you feel like this is what I want to do, but I'm not ready yet.
Well, I have 2, but I think I'm ready, and I'm working on them now.
Nice.
One of them, I want to do a compilation book for Pack Magic 1 and 2. I don't know how or if that's going to happen, but when when Secrets of Pack Magic, Dario's book first came out, he had this massive 350-page book that is literally a gem to look at, both in terms of its PDF and the physical copy. It's like the size of the Pathfinder role-playing game rule book. It's huge.
Oh, nice.
I would love...
You can give someone a hernia with that.
Exactly, yeah. And I would love to do something like that with the Pathfinder Pack Magic rules, but it's going to take more time because I only have about 160 pages already done. And someday, I don't know when, but it's a personal goal of mine to someday do. The other thing I want to do is I want to do a Kitsune player companion, because I love that race and I want more people to love it, so I want to talk about them and talk about why I love it. And I'm working on that now, actually, trying to do my research. I'm looking at Paizo's player companions and Paizo's race books, see what I think worked, what I think didn't work, trying to figure out what kind of things to talk about. One thing that I know I'm going to put in the book somewhere is I'm going to talk about Kitsune and Hibachi, because Hibachi, if you know Hibachi, it's like doing all the crazy performances with cooking. Yeah. And when you read the Kitsune race, where they love arts and they love artsy things and they love basically being showboaters, I just imagine a fox doing Hibachi to be the most hilarious thing I can come up with. So nice. It's one of the things I want to be in there. And I don't know if it's going to be a rule system or just be a sentence, Kitsune like to do this because it's funny. And but it's just, I think that I'm ready to start tackling those big projects, so I'm slowly working on it. But out of all of, what's that for?
Your Hibachi Kitsune, I've got an idea. I've got to put this, I'm going to put it to you.
I'm ready.
And I'm going to talk to our artist, but what if we did a webcomic on that one? We could dedicate that to Alex.
Have a webcomic.
I think Ryan would get a kick out of that idea.
What you do is you make him a swashbuckler from the Paizo, in the new book that they're coming out with, the Advanced Class Guide, because they have an ability where they add their level to damage with any one-handed or light piercing weapons. So then you just have him with knives, and he's cooking up his hibachi and throwing knives at people.
In our Dark Sun game, we have someone playtesting the swashbuckler.
Oh, how is it going for that player?
Well, we haven't had that many sessions yet.
It's been rather late.
But no, good so far. He's playing a nobleman that likes to dabble in the gladiatorial arena. So, I think he picked, and obviously, you're not going to have your traditional pirate-ass swinging from the rafters kind of swashbuckler in Dark Sun because there's no water. But in other ways, combining a nobleman's son with who likes to play in the gladiator arenas, it kind of works.
I think that of those 10 classes that are coming out, the Swashbuckler is probably my favorite, just because I love charisma-based martial characters. I think that they have so much fun and flavor to them, and I think that, I have my concerns about the grit and panache system. I think that it leads to, like, Swashbucklers don't have much variety to them. It's because you get all of those abilities at the same level and everybody gets the same thing and there isn't a whole lot of choice. I think that they could fix that by making more grit and panache feats. Like there's a special category of feats that are specifically new abilities to interact with those subsystems. But generally speaking, just from the class written as it is, it's very if you take two swashbucklers and put them side by side, the only thing that's likely to be different is the weapons they use. Right. And most people are going to want to use the rapier for its better crit range anyway, so that might not even be different.
Right, so they're kind of identical.
To be fair, though, the gunslinger has it much worse, because at least the swashbuckler can pick his weapons. The gunslinger gets long gunned or short gunned. But I also like that class too, because I think trying something new in fantasy, like with the guns, is a good idea.
Right.
I think that in order for our hobby to continue into the future to the point where we don't get bored with it, people need to try new things, and people need to have those types of crazy, weird designs. I guess that means, okay.
So, anything else to
No, I mean, it was good to hear all your projects. I'm excited to check some of those out. You know, for you guys who want to know more about Alex, below there will be a link. You know, we'll link to everything you mentioned. We'll link to your Facebook page,
your products,
your websites, and products. You know, and hopefully we'll be able to get together and have a game.
Oh, that would be fun. We should see if we can get the camera and watch how ridiculous we are together. That would be fun.
Well, we've had some requests for that, so it's in the future, definitely.
So in that case, click like, subscribe, comment, tell us, what else you want to know about this guy, or, go check out his stuff. I'm certainly going to go out and purchase some of the products. The psychology thing sounds awesome. The pack sounds awesome.
And with that, stay nerdy, my friends. Until next time.
Take care.